Hey guys, it's Dan. Nothing in the middle this time, but as you might have seen from the thumbnail, what we're going to be discussing here is my collection of basing supplies. I did a video on just kind of the generic basing that I do for all the miniatures that I paint these days. That gives, I think, decent enough detail on how I use these. But what I realized looking back was two things. One, that my collection of basing stuff has grown since then. But two, that it didn't really give a very good overview of what some of this stuff is and where it's from. So I wanted to go through and just give you some insight into what I've been purchasing, and again, maybe add a little bit more context to the video that I already produced on how I've been using it. So I have, maybe I mentioned this in the basing video, I think it's been like 2 years since I put that out, but I have kind of 4 categories of basing supply that I wanted to go through, so I'll tackle them one at a time. I've got them kind of scattered around me right here as I'm standing. I guess let's start with static grasses and flock. We'll kind of go in the order that I base with. So when I'm basing, again, I put a layer of sand down first. I'll use like a graveyard earth kind of color, and then I'll just do a simple dry brush of a more tan color. And that's the foundation on which I start layering stuff. So what you've got here, I've got 2 kinds of static grass. One is from the Army Painter. I keep a lot of this stuff in bags, in addition to it being already in boxes, just because this kind of stuff is prone to popping open. I don't want that happening inside of my container that I use to hold all of my basing supplies and then get static grass all over everything. So just kind of like a safety measure. Yeah, I have 2 different kinds of static grass, 2 different colors of static grass, and I don't mix these together. What I'll do is when I'm basing, I lean pretty heavily on this one, which is you can see kind of like a spring green grass from the Army Painter, and this stuff's excellent. This is my go-to at this point for static grass, and this is, I would say this is the one product that basically every model gets. There's some element of this, and I don't cover the whole base as I described in the basing tutorial, but every model will get that battlefield grass. This one I use a little bit more sparingly, and again, I don't mix them together. What I'll do is I'll put a layer down of this, and then maybe on some bases I'll come through and do little sections of like dried grass, because that's what this is actually. I think this is also, well, this is suggesting this is a Gale Force 9 container. So maybe that is what it is, but I haven't purchased anything from Gale Force 9 in probably like 15 years, which back to the point about some of this stuff just being around for a long time. That I've been building this collection up over a long period of time. And then flock is actually something I've been recently getting back into, just because it adds a nice kind of textural variety to your standard static grass. Again, I use it in the same way. All this is applied with Elmer's glue, again, as I went through in the tutorial. As kind of a foundation layer on which I'll put like tufts and stuff like that. But flock, I have got 2 different kinds. These are both from Woodland Scenics. They came in Woodland Scenic containers, of course, but I just threw them into Ziploc bags for easier storage. So I've got one that's kind of like yellow, and then one that's got some orange bits in it as well. And again, not everything will get this, but once I've done my static grass layer, I'll come through with some flock and then try to figure out if anything looks like it could use some flock. I use this also kind of to cover up some issues that might exist either when I was putting the sand layer down, if there's still like exposed base, or especially with historical models, I don't cut off that tab that they sit on. I find that I can successfully cover that up just through basing, but if there is maybe like a lip or something that doesn't look quite right, I'll add a little bit of extra static grass or flock kind of as a band-aid to come in to cover some of that stuff up. So again, flock from Woodland Scenic, I've got static grass from Gale Force 9 and the Army Painter, all of which is excellent. And then from there, the next step that I take is I'll move into clump foliage. And this bag I mentioned is Woodland Scenic's light green clump foliage, and this is probably the oldest product I have. I had this since I was like, I think 15. It's probably one of the very first basing supplies that I got at a Hobbytown, USA, in southeastern Pennsylvania. That is no longer there, but I remember buying it, and I've been using it ever since, because the way that I utilize this is just by pinching off little pieces. This is designed for model railroads, but when I'm doing basing, I can just take off tiny little pieces. So like this clump here is probably more than enough to do an entire unit the way that I do this application. So they end up looking like little tiny bushes on the bases. And this is another thing where just about every model in a unit is going to get something out of this container, even if it might be like a larger bush like this, or it might be something as small as that. But everything gets something out of that. Again, it adds just some nice color variety and some nice textural variety, because we're going for kind of different heights on bases. And then we move into the more exotic stuff. So this is a similar concept. It's a little bit stringier. And this, I think this actually came from Hobby Lobby of all places. I don't know what the brand was, but it came in a little container, a little pouch, and I ended up just transferring it to this Ziploc bag. But you can see it's also clump foliage, but it almost is like sponge-like in its texture. And so when you tear it apart, it has like kind of a stringy nature to it, which adds I think, a neat element to it, but it's also a much darker color than the other clump foliage that I have. So not everything will get this. Some bases I'll go in and I'll just drop that in and go from there. This is really exotic. This is like coral. It's soft. I thought it was hard when I first got it, but it's soft. It's like kind of spongy. And when you pull off little pieces of it, I found it looks like kind of like a dried desert plant. So that's another one that maybe 1 or 2 models in a unit of 30 will get something out of this. So that's the static grasses, the flock, and the clump foliage. So as we move over into the tufts, this is where things kind of get a little out of control. Because as I said, again, in my defense, I pick this stuff up. Maybe every time I go to a hobby store, I'll get one thing. And so, as I said, that extends out the life cycle of all of this stuff. And it tangentially allows me to have a lot of variety when it comes to basing. So I've had them organized here by height. So the smallest ones are from Gamer's Grass. This is on the left-hand side. This is 2 millimeters in height. So this is probably about the same height as static grass out of the Army Painter container, but it's arranged as tufts. And when I apply these, almost all of these have adhesive on the bottom of them, but I use super glue to stick them down to bases just because the adhesives are not enough to stay on bases forever, whereas super glue is. So a nice dark moss color, kind of like a green brown, and it's very short, so I can put this down on top of static grass or on top of flock or partially on top of it even. And then because it's so short, I can then potentially come in and layer on other tufts. The way that I do this, again, this is some redundancy with the like basing how-to video, is if I have, again, using a unit of 30 as an example, I almost like arrange them in a row and then kind of count off. So like every, say, 3rd model is going to get this one, and then every 5th model is going to get something from this, and every 7th model maybe gets one of these. And so that adds like almost like a mathematical variety. It sounds organized, but then when you mix the unit up, it adds a tremendous amount of variety. These were a gift actually that came with these. So again, back to a lot of this stuff being originally designed for, I think, railroad use. This is a company, I think, out of the UK called World War Scenics, and I ordered a couple of things from them. Some of the other stuff I got, I've already used it all up, but these ones are very large. So these are 10 millimeter bushes, and what I typically do when I use these is I'll rip them in half, and then on a 20 millimeter square base, it ends up being a good amount of material. So I can then use, 2 pieces, one on each of 2 bases. But this came as a gift. When I purchased this and some other stuff, they just threw this in some like dark brown winter tufts, they call them. So yeah, they were into, again, 2 millimeter was the start, 10 millimeters the largest. These are the 4 millimeters. So again, this is a more of like a reddish brown tuft, and this is you can't really see it, but this is a kind of beige brown color. Again, all 4 millimeter. And we're into now like 6 millimeter here. Something in between the 4 and the 10. And again, more of this reddish brown color, but a slightly lighter variant. This is from Gamer's Grass, and this is actually from Vallejo, a similar looking product. And then more of this Gamer's Grass. This is like an alien tuft green version, and then Army Painter. Army Painter, if I had to pick just one, Army Painter would probably be my go-to, but it's not always available where I'm at. So as I said, I try out a different variety of products from a variety of manufacturers, and that gives me a good amount to fall back on. So a lot of tufts to use as well. And again, you can even see just from looking at it that I deliberately choose a wide palette of color, because then when I have, say, if I, within a unit of 30, I'm using even just one of each of these types, it gives you a lot of cool, natural color. It provides a variety within that. So, and the final product type that I have is a variation on that, which is tufts that are floral. And this one's kind of, there's an asterisk on this one, which is, this is from a company called Huge Miniatures, but they're not designed to be floral tufts, but they kind of look like floral tufts when you put them down. So anyway, this. But these, you can see, I really like these for the pop of color that they provide, again, with all the other beiges and browns and greens that exist within my basing supplies. More Army Painter here, a lot from Gamer's Grass. This one is one of the original flower sets that I picked up that I've been nursing for the better part of like 3 years now. And I don't remember the company, but these were excellent. Gamer's Grass, in terms of like, this wasn't intended as a review, but like these are newer for me. I just picked these up recently, and while I didn't have any issue with this Gamer's Grass set or this Gamer's Grass set, the yellow pieces on the blue pieces on this one I found flake off. So this one specifically I might not recommend, but everything else is excellent. Army Painter, as usual, is excellent. You can see like this is, it's all very similar in terms of product type, but these, it's almost like they take a static grass tuft, like the one that we looked at earlier, and then come in with like a sprinkling of maybe even just flock. But some of it has a spikier element to it. These are like larger flakes, which is maybe why they come off more readily than the other ones. These ones actually look like ivy, like some kind of undergrowth. And then I mentioned these flowers that I quite like. And this color I just thought was really neat. It's one that I pop in, like, again, maybe like one model in a unit of 30 will get that just because it's such a vibrant color. So anyway, quick video. That's everything I've got. I've got some other stuff like jungle aquarium plants and some small trees and stuff that I've picked up, but those usually only get used for either specialty projects or like a display board would be where those things pull in. But so yeah, in terms of overall product, again, the philosophy is just have a wide variety to draw on, which gives a nice diverse look to the units, and it allows you to use some of this stuff for much longer than you'd be able to do otherwise. So anyway, till next time, happy gaming, everybody.